Welcome to Digging Deep, the podcast where we offer bereavement bites for time-pressed professionals. I'm Heather Kiteley, second-generation funeral director and president and CEO of GFD. Today on our podcast, we have Wes Elmes, general manager, Haskett Funeral Homes. Wes was licensed in 2013, grew up on a farm outside of Kincardine, moved to Toronto. That must have been a bit of a culture shift.
Very much.
After high school, and attended funeral service education at Humber College. So like most of us in this profession, started young, deeply committed to the families that he serves. He consistently goes the extra mile to ensure that each farewell is unique, which is great because that's what we're going to be talking about today. In addition to his passion for funeral service, he is a certified funeral celebrant and a registered practical nurse. Wes is the current president of the Western Ontario Funeral Service Association. And welcome, Wes. We're
Thank
so
you.
excited to have you here. We are talking about cultural shifts, the rise of celebratory funeral ceremonies.
I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
We are so excited to have you here. So I wanted to start first unpacking funeral director, celebrate that. Okay, I can get that lead. We're going to talk a little bit about that, but practical nursing, what the heck? How'd that happen?
Well, I started off obviously in funeral service and first 4 years of my career in Toronto at Turner & Porter. And
Turner & Porter alumni.
Yep,
Nice.
100%. Yep. And it was all really great. I just thought I needed a change at that particular time. And my mom has a healthcare background. My brother is a paramedic. And she thought, why not try nursing? You're still caring for people in a different setting. And I think that you would really like it. So away I went. And this might be a little bit of a surprise, but I ended up as a palliative care nurse. So not too terribly far off from funeral services, and it's very, very rewarding. It's very rewarding, and something that I will always remember is seeing those families in that time of their lives, and then their loved one passes away, and they're expected to walk through the doors of a funeral home and make huge decisions.
Okay, so probably one of the few people who are going into nursing, especially palliative care nursing, knowing what's on the other side for families, right? And is that kind of what you mean? Like that whole, you're there with the family, helping them through that poor, difficult moment, but you also know what's going on. You know what they're facing.
Right.
So talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, and I think, it's someone could be palliative for 3 weeks, they could be palliative for 1 day, and the family is up all hours of the night caring for their mom, for their dad. They're tired, they're exhausted, they haven't had a shower, and now I know what they have to do next, because most places, families come in the day of, the next day, maybe in 2 days.
Well, and you've been there on the other side.
Exactly. They don't get to take a week off and then come to the funeral.
So did it change? Obviously, you came back to funeral service. Did that experience change you as a funeral director?
Yes, I would say very much so.
How so?
You have a better understanding of, the emotions that are in the room when you're making arrangements with them, and have a better understanding of, you're at the hospital with mom or dad for 2 weeks, and now we're here.
Yeah.
So, they maybe had some grieving process already start. However, now we're here, and we're tired, we're exhausted. We've maybe showered, maybe not, and I don't even know where I want to start with my dad's arrangements. So
It's such a strange feeling, My dad passed in the spring, and that was really my first experience with all of that, which is interesting, right? Yeah, being on the other side. So 30-year career,
yep.
And you can imagine it. But it made me realize you can't imagine it. You can't, even, you know everything about it, and you still are it's like your thinking is disordered, right? It's fascinating.
Yeah.
So it changed how you went back. So how did it change how you serve families?
I just think the understanding of what they've been through changed the way that I thought. Not necessarily the way I acted or before.
Did you change anything in how you approached making arrangements with families?
Yeah, I think I would say I would take things certainly a little slower. You definitely have, you understand that they're maybe not grasping everything that is being talked about. And one thing I started doing afterwards is sending a very in-depth follow-up email of everything we've talked about.
Oh, interesting.
What time to come.
Like that's a real practical nugget.
Yeah. They're hearing you, but they're not hearing you. They're just walking out, and they maybe would call the next day. What time do we have to come again for visitation?
Like basic stuff, right? Where you're like,
yeah. So
let me tell you again. Right?
Yeah. So just send. This is what we talked about. This is what we decided on. Here's the plan for the next few days. Pictures. Have them ready for this time. Visitation 45 to 60 minutes beforehand. Come to the funeral home this time.
I love that. So if any folks are listening to this, I think that's like a real practical takeaway that maybe we don't think about, right?
Right.
And I think, if you've been in funeral service for a long time, you know it. You know that people aren't really hearing, but just taking it that one extra practical step, I think is really, really important. Okay, we're going to dig into what you're super passionate about, which is celebratory funerals. For a long time, I think the narrative in funeral service has been that people don't want what it is that we have to offer. And GFD recently did a consumer survey because we really wanted to sort of understand was there any generational implications to what funeral service might look like, and how are things going to change. And I've always kind of had this sense that millennials will embrace funeral service in a way, they might not call it that, and we'll talk about that, but they're going to embrace funeral service in a way that no other generation has because they celebrate everything. And you're in that cohort, so you can probably, like, I'm an old dog. you're like right there, and you're like, yeah, duh, of course. But I think, ceremony and ritual is so important to this generation, gender reveal parties, whatnot. And so we were not surprised. So I think that number is 70% of millennials want some kind of service of some kind, which I think is wonderful. But also they're showing a trend that they want it to be different and they want it to look different. So unpack that for me. What do you think about that? You're obviously a celebrant. This is important. I am just going to open the mic for you. Tell us what you think.
Yeah. It's interesting, as you were saying about celebrating everything. This is a total side story, but I was very passionate last year to celebrate my champagne birthday. I was 31 on the 31st, and a lot of people had no idea what that was.
I don't even know what that is. Yeah, well, so I'm Gen X, and we just don't care about anything. So we're just tired.
And my partner was like, "What are you even talking about? This isn't a thing." I said, "It is a thing, and we're celebrating it." So wait. Anyways, back to what we're here for.
I love it though, right? Because it's true.
Yeah.
And you know what? As a self-confessed cynical Gen Xer, I love that you do that, right? Because that's what we're all here for. That's what life is all about, is taking the time. And in funeral service, we should know that more than most, right? So first of all, let me just say, and at GFD, we celebrate the millennials because you guys got it going on.
Yeah. I mean, at the Haskett Funeral Home, we are all celebrants. All of our licensed funeral directors are celebrants.
Amazing.
Which is fantastic. It's, once you join our team and you're ready to go to the course, off you go and become a celebrant. It's a wonderful thing. We are officiating close to 50% of our services.
Really?
As certified celebrants. And it has been a huge change for us in a good way. And the millennials that want to have this celebratory service, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. The business is changing. Cremation is on the rise. We're 60 to 65% cremation.
So you're still low compared to some communities, right? In Burlington, where I used to work, it was 90% cremation since the 90s.
Yeah, we are pretty lucky that we're still sitting there, and certainly climbing still. And we have of that percentage, we do have a fairly large percent that still has the body present
Yes.
and then cremation.
Right.
Which is great.
Because as we all know, cremation is just what you're going to do with the deceased. It doesn't mean anything.
That's
it doesn't
right.
mean, it doesn't dictate what you have to do.
Yep. And I think, there's a lot of things that I could say that would impact all of this, but, in my opinion, the average age of death seems to be lower, which leaves millennials looking after their deceased parents at a significantly young age, in my opinion.
Interesting.
And they maybe have been to other celebrations of life before, that they are just, following that path, or, they have access to the internet, to social media, that they see random things that they want to do. And, from my observation, church attendance is down, certainly in our areas. And this shows even when we do have a church service, I can probably think of 5 ladies groups that still do lunches at the churches, and we serve a huge area with a number of churches, and there's just no women power there anymore. And so with the decline of attendance at church, people are looking towards more a celebration of life, or having a celebrant take part in their service.
So let's really dig into this, because I think that this is something that we need to talk about, which is how important is language to millennials? So my question to you as a millennial is, so the cynical me, I mean, a funeral by any other name is still a funeral. So why do we have to get hung up on language? How important is that?
To me,
Yeah.
the language is not important.
Okay.
So,
but what about your cohort? What about your fellow millennials? Because you're in the business, right? So you're like, oh, I'm comfortable with the word funeral. What about everybody else? Because I think sometimes we dismiss the importance of language.
Yeah, I think that they don't feel comfortable with that word, and they don't want that.
So they don't want it.
No. However, what they do want is, we're going to have a celebration life for my dad, and we're going to have it on Saturday afternoon from 1 to 4 p.m. Okay. Yeah, that sounds great. That sounds great. Do you think you want to have any words of words? Do you want to stop at any particular time and have people come forward and share stories? Yeah, I think that would be great. I would love to speak at my dad's service, at my dad's celebration, and tell some stories. Okay. Should we incorporate any special songs into that?
Yeah.
Maybe one to start the words off, one to finish. Yeah, I think that would be great. Okay. Do you think you'd want to have a certified celebrant? They could, start us off. We could call them an MC. We don't even have to call them a celebrant. And they could just kind of wrap everything together, maybe share a little bit. Yeah. Okay, yeah, that's fine. We don't want any religion. Okay, all right. Okay, so now we have words of remembrance that are going to take place at 2:30, and we're going to have a celebrant start us off with a special song. There's going to be people come share stories, and then the celebrant's going to wrap everything up and invite everybody to go back to mingling and sharing stories. What do we just have?
We just had a
funeral.
So who cares what we call it?
Right?
Like, why do we care what we call it if that's the thing that they're doing that is so important to them?
I will write whatever you want in that obituary as long as it's appropriate. We can call it anything, but we're having a funeral.
It's so interesting about how we can get hung up on what we describe things. Bill Denning and I were talking about that, in another podcast about like how over like the last 200 years we've changed how we refer to ourselves. So why not just reinvent that again? But we are running out of time. So I just want to ask you if was there sort of a pivotal moment or a particular story or event that you feel really changed how you think about this, or maybe had you become more convicted about because it's obvious the passion of the work that you do.
Yeah. A moment that literally just happened for me in the last year, I'll say, is we had a family come to us. Their husband and their dad had passed away very suddenly. He did all of the construction on our new location in Exeter.
Oh, so someone you know.
So he was really, really close to us, and it was already really hard for us. It was really hard that he had passed away.
Yeah.
And he came from a very religious background. So, you know, we would go to the house to make arrangements. What day should we have visitation? Okay. And then mass to follow. And the kids say, yeah, we have to go to the church for that.
Okay.
And the deceased wife spoke up and said, no.
Oh.
Things in the church have changed, and you know, 6-8 months ago, when my mom passed, her name was pronounced wrong the entire service, and that has really hurt me still.
Wow.
So I think we'll have a minister come and do a religious portion, but we're going to have you act as the celebrant.
Oh, wow. That's a huge departure.
And I said,
Yeah.
are you sure? Yes, we're sure.
Wow.
Okay, fast forward to the next week. We had visitation. We ended
How hard
up.
for you? Let me just interject, because really I don't think that people understand this. Truly. How hard for you to be in that role for someone that you care about who has died, right? Whole other podcast. Anyway, I just want to call that out.
Insanely hard. Yeah, insanely hard. And I didn't think that I could do it. I went to Colin, I said, I don't think I can do this. And he said, you can. And you have to, because that's what they want. And you'll feel really good afterwards. So, you know, I did it. And it was the most rewarding. When it was over, it was the most rewarding service that I have ever done. Yeah, we ended up having to have it on an arena ice surface because the crowd was just so big, and it felt good.
So, can you sum up for me in a couple of words how that changed you?
Courageous would be a good word.
Also, that theme of courage and being able to have those difficult conversations is one that's woven through all of the discussions that I have with folks in the bereavement sector, because so much of the work that we do requires like a whole heap of courage. So, in closing, is there anything that you would like to share if, for anyone who might be thinking about getting into the profession, or someone who might be thinking about switching careers, having switched a couple times yourself? Is there anything that you would want to share?
I think that this is a very rewarding career, and if you know, anybody is interested in getting into it, it's definitely worth it. And you know, on the flip side of that, if you know you're thinking of leaving the business, you'll be sad when you do, and you'll come back just like I did, because your passion will be still there. And as far as celebrant work, if you're at all interested in becoming a celebrant, it is a totally different, rewarding feeling than being a funeral director. It seems like it's one and the same, but it's completely different. You really dig into the life of somebody, and you get to learn. It's as if you knew them.
It's like a whole new level of intimacy with the families.
And then you get to share it, what you've learned, with everyone that is present. And sharing new facts and new stories that, you know, maybe half of the room didn't even know about. And it is amazing.
No better testimony than that. So thank you so much. This concludes this episode of Digging Deep. I want to thank Wes Elmes for joining me today. Wes, that was really wonderful hearing you speak from your heart. Thank you so much. My name is Heather Kiteley, President and CEO of GFD.
Thanks, Heather.
Thank you.